All right, guys. Hope everybody's doing good. My name is Rob Foster, listening to KC Music Talk. This is sort of a special edition for me. I'm really excited for this conversation. We've got a cello player and teacher, and I don't know where the heck he is right now. We'll find that out. But he's been playing with a whole bunch of awesome people, including people like Yo-Yo Ma and Mark O'Connor and others. And then also selfishly for me, we had a little connection in high school, went to the same high school and played in Orchestra together. So this is going to be extremely fun for me today, and I'm sure him too. But Mike Block, how the heck you doing, man?
I'm doing good, Rob Foster. It's awesome to get to talk to you and to even sort of get to start to think about my time back in KC, where we grew up together. Yeah, this is awesome. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, no problem, man. Yeah, we've talked. I think we talked once for a little bit a couple of years ago. This is like the second time in like 20 years. So this is,
I know.
I'm sure, fun for both of us right now.
Yeah.
But I know you and I think you'd probably agree with this. So you and I weren't necessarily like close in high school or anything like that, but we were certainly at everything together. Being in the same grade and all the 3 years with all state and all the district things and all of
Those were
that.
some
So
bonding weekends. I remember, yeah,
mhm.
All-State was big and I felt, like in public high school, there's not many people in the orchestra that are taking it seriously and thinking about a career in music already in high school. And I remember you and just a few others of us were kind of in that mindset already, together, freshman sophomore year.
Right. Yeah, I'd love to talk about that here in a minute because I have some questions about that I've been thinking about for a long time. But for you, I know I can probably speak for the whole orchestra specifically, that we're just hearing some of the stuff that you've done. We're all extremely proud of what you've done. I mean, like you kind of, I know you're probably not going to want to toot your own horn, but you've kind of gone in the stratosphere, and we're all really amazed to hear you playing with certain people. And so, like, tell us about what you've been doing the last little bit.
Well, that's very sweet of you, Rob. I think the good thing to continually remember is that whichever stratosphere you're currently in, there's always somebody higher up to make you feel bad about yourself. So, it's like we're all just trying to figure out, how can we do what we want to do. It took me a long time to figure out, actually what I wanted to do with music. And even though, you and I were in orchestra together, my family is full of musicians. My dad is an orchestra conductor. That's the world I came from as a cello player. But I felt like I had some untapped interests, from early on. And, I went to college to study cello at the Cleveland Institute of Music. But it was really in college when I started to realize that actually the world of cello music is not the only world of music that I'm interested in.
Mm.
And so I was really struggling to stay committed. The way that music education is like I was learning the cello and I was learning music written for the cello.
Mm.
It was just already clear to me by my second year of college that wasn't, for whatever reason, gonna truly keep me as happy and engaged as I wanted to feel with music. So it was a long journey for me to find, essentially outside of classical music, all of the things that continue to excite me to today. So essentially, despite my classical upbringing and training, my favorite thing to do now is to collaborate with musicians from different cultures and to collaborate
Mm.
other, and to improvise and compose and collaborate in different styles. And so, for better or for worse, I've had, kind of artistic ADD, and I have
Mm.
multiple projects that I've started with different collaborators from different areas of the world. And really for me, that's what I enjoy is like as we were just speaking before we started recording, like I'm in Ohio this week
Mm.
playing in a duo with an Indian tabla player. But from here, I go home to Boston and I'm going to play a duo with a balafon player from Mali in West Africa. And then my next concert after that is another duo with a traditional pipa player from China. So, like, I do a
Mm.
lot of traditional music and find people that are interested in collaborating across cultures. But then I like writing songs, and having my own kind of like singer-songwriter projects and stuff, and basically incapable of committing to any one thing. And I think the novelty is what keeps me going. So, through college and professionally, luckily, just trying to do things that maybe most cello players don't think of doing has met me professionally, where like the things I'm interested in, I get opportunities to do more of. And so that's been really cool over time, to feel like I'm getting opportunities that like you mentioned Yo-Yo Ma, like there's no reason I should be playing next to Yo-Yo Ma at all. Like that's not really something that like that's not on the bingo card of cello players' plans. Like, you don't play cello with Yo-Yo Ma, like under what circumstance? And for me, it was through Silk Road Ensemble that I joined like 17 years ago now. But it basically, like, all of those unique opportunities only come because I was starting to do things that nobody was asking me to do. No teacher was telling me, oh, you should, start improvising. It was just things that I started, attempting for my own sanity and just trying to get better at over time.
Yeah, wow. I mean, like you were talking right there, and I'm like, yeah, I mean, what universe am I in? This doesn't even make sense, like I play with Yo-Yo, that's just like, like, I mean, did I hear this right, that he played at your wedding?
He did play at my wedding.
I mean, that's insane, right? Like, that's not even like, uh-oh.
I think we got frozen.
Yeah. But yeah, I mean, like, that's the kind of the stuff I was hearing. So I was like, what?
Well,
he played at your wedding.
This is how generous Yo-Yo is. I was working with him a lot around the time, of leading up to the wedding. And so there was one point when I realized that we were like the wedding venue that we booked, I knew was like of where he lived. And so I was thinking, oh, I should ask him to play. That's probably the best way to get him to come. And so I did. And what was very sweet is, like, without pausing or hesitating at all, I asked him if he would play. And his first response was, oh, yeah, you should write something for me to play. So I actually got to write something for him to play at the wedding. So, like, yeah, incredible generosity from him, and like obviously a very special moment. I married a musician. My wife, Hanukkah Castle, plays Scottish fiddle. So her Scottish fiddle hero is a man named Alasdair Fraser. So he also played, and so it felt really meaningful for us to include kind of our heroes and mentors in that way.
Yeah, wow.
I mean, yeah.
So I want to get back to the improv thing here in a minute, because I have some questions about that. But to make sure we get to talk about this, I definitely want to talk about South, because it's just going to be fun for both of us.
So Shawnee Mission South.
So we had Mary Lou Jones was our director, and I'm just curious, like, your sense, because I haven't been out of the city a ton to do stuff, especially with different orchestras around different states or whatever. But I considered us, because East at the time was just like a powerhouse with John Lane. I got to interview him the other day, which was really fun on the show. He came on, so that was fun. Getting his perspective on those like late 90s years, and what was going on in the city. But I always considered us to be kind of like the top 5 programs in the city, especially the number of people. We had like 120 kids when we were there. I mean, pretty big program and stuff. And what was your sense of those years?
That's a good question. Like, back when we were in high school, obviously I had zero perspective as to what was out there. But now I'm thinking about how many high school orchestras I've visited over the years. And South was definitely high level. Dr. Mary Lou Jones was and is fantastic. And I think gave us achievable things to rise towards. I have all fond memories of that orchestra experience. I think there was maybe a unique number of us that were serious about music, which helps, when you've got, in that school orchestra setting, when the principals are all really able to lead. people who might not be practicing much or even taking lessons necessarily. So we had that, in the sort of the upper circles, I guess. But I never even thought about the size of the group. You're right. It was always a healthy program, in my memory, size wise, and I think actually one of the coolest things I remember, which doesn't happen everywhere, but could and should, is that we had like the big side by side concerts where the elementary school and the middle school and the high school would all play on a single event.
Yeah.
I think those moments of like seeing the groups ahead of you and understanding like where you can go, like
Pretty neat, right?
those are very thoughtfully,
Yeah.
put together, those events to keep people engaged and interested and to grow the program through those years. Yeah. Yeah, I think it was a great program. And I guess, yeah, you're right. With Jonathan Lane at East, like the whole district, seemed well supported in my memory. Yeah.
Yeah, it was. I had a lot. I look back very fondly. I was very active in orchestra. I think I did literally every single strolling gig she had. And I was doing all the contests, and you were doing a lot of stuff too. And so, she ended up helping me get my scholarship. And so me and Mary Lou were very close. I'd say, but it was fun because I agree we had 30, it would be about 30 in our particular class, but there was a handful of kids, I'd say 2 to 5 in almost every grade that were taking lessons and then, and doing the state or doing even the district contests and stuff. So, I mean, it was fun that we had, a handful of kids that were kind of just there, and they were having fun, but a bunch of us that were like kind of really caring and I'd say everybody was caring, nobody wanted it to sound bad or anything, but did you, I'm kind of curious, since you've been kind of around more with like East and South and whatever, have you gotten a sense of a bunch of other cities are like, because I've heard some stories like in random places where they're like, we don't even have music in public school, like, have you gotten a sense of like, was any other place that you've been like pretty relatively, because it seemed like Kansas City was relatively strong, but maybe they aren't.
Yeah. No, I would say that's true. I mean, I think you're right that like in rural areas, I think music programs might be more likely to get cut. I've definitely encountered great programs across the country, public, at public schools. I think it's a combination. I've seen great programs deteriorate over the years when like there's a teacher change, and so it's like this combination. Like you've got to obviously have the funding, and there's got to be an orchestra room. Like there's got to be the infrastructure to support a music program, which not everywhere has. But even with that, it's really amazing how much of it hinges on a great teacher, and at all levels. Like you'll get maybe a mediocre middle school teacher who doesn't he doesn't get the kids up to a high enough level by freshman year, so that the high school teacher kind of can't do as much as they otherwise could because they're still working on fundamentals. So it's like every link in that chain has to be connected for a program to be really great, and they do exist, but it's kind of hard to manufacture because it really depends on the people involved.
Sure.
But that the risk of losing funding, I feel like I heard a lot more talk about that maybe 10-15 years ago. I'm not aware of that being as active of a conversation right now, but I'm sure that's a risk for certain programs.
It was a topic when we were there. I remember us talking about it, where even when Mary Lou was there, people making those comments or whatever. I mean, I'm just curious, like for you guys that were dealing with youth symphony, right? So you guys were playing, very difficult repertoire for a high school, for regular high school kids. I mean, you guys were up at the top, and I'm just kind of selfishly curious on your end, because you were joking about you were saying stuff about how she was playing good repertoire, and I was kind of joking in my head, well, it was good for us, but Mike was bored, like that's what I was hearing in my head. I'm joking, but how did you, for somebody for somebody like myself who'd been playing since 3, whatever, up at the top of our grade or whatever, there was even some stuff for me after just switching to viola that was challenging in our music. I had to go like practice it a little bit. But for somebody like yourself, what would be the advice you would have for somebody else who's like a Suzuki kid, who, especially in the lower grades, like when they get into middle school and these kids are working on shifting, and you did that 5 years ago, like what would you have any advice for any of those, like, I guess musically gifted kids, and how to like handle that in orchestra and not get bored or not get like, I don't know if understand my question, but like,
yeah. Well, what I remember, so I played in the Youth Symphony of Kansas City for many years. And I remember, I assume the policy is still in effect, but when I was a kid, the Youth Symphony required us to be in the public school orchestra programs. You couldn't be in this Youth Symphony extracurricular activity if you weren't in the public schools.
I didn't know that.
Yeah. And the reason for that was that you didn't want an entire metro area's worth of like serious music kids to abandon their public orchestras, and so like the instinct for that was really great, to like keep everybody connected and to support the school orchestra programs by having maybe these more serious kids not leave them, even if, as you're saying, the level disparity might be real. So with that, and all I mean is, like, it never occurred to me to not be an orchestra.
Yeah.
It was never something I was like considering or wanting. It just was like, oh yeah, I'm in this and I'm in this, and that's just, this is what I'll always be in, right? But so I think the successful moments or times, I mean, I think what I got out of the experience was this, this opportunity to attempt to be a leader or a positive force, or I'm sure you felt it too from Mary Lou Jones, where it's like when she's like giving us responsibility or needing us to help lead, or whatever the small comment or things are, like those are experiences for a kid to grow into, and to know what it is to sort of try and help somebody. And I mean, in our orchestra, I remember everybody being so cool, like everybody was so nice. And I remember all the other cellists in the section who probably never played cello outside of orchestra a note, and the moment they graduated high school probably never played cello ever again, right? But I sat next to them for 4 years, and I just remember everybody being cool and nice, and like it just felt like there was an environment where I might have something to offer. But I do remember, actually, it was probably when I was starting to get even more serious, probably senior year maybe, there was some moment where Dr. Mary Lee Jones like kind of brought me into her office, and she was kind of like disappointed in me. I think she for whatever reason like felt like I was bored or unengaged or whatever, like I was sending off a bad attitude.
Interesting.
And I wasn't even aware of it. I was, and so maybe that's why it was so bad. But it's not like I was like actively frustrated or anything, but I was in my own world enough that she called me out like one week, and it was just sort of like basically trying to like remind me, like, it's like, what role I could play in that environment, or but it stood out to me just because, like, when you're taking private lessons or when you're in youth symphony where you're constantly stretching yourself, like I had been used to being told what I had done wasn't good. I was not used to being told that like you need to be happier, and like you need to like just not be like a negative Nancy or like whatever. I don't really remember what it was, but it's like the first time I had gotten a criticism in that musical setting that wasn't actually anything to do with my playing, but more just my presence in the group.
Yeah, wow.
So kind of a little bit of like but I played all the notes right. So what's the problem? It took me a while to understand.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You were talking about the feeder schools, and so this was one of the questions that I've wanted to ask you for like 20 years, and is when I think back, because I'm trying to think of like especially in like a private teaching setting, I've been constantly thinking about the whole idea of like, what are we doing here, and like, why are we sitting here in this lesson, sort of, and you'll see where I'm going with this. So I'm looking at the numbers, because you were talking about those kids that didn't pick it up after college or after high school. And
Right.
so I'm trying to do this math here. So we're sitting here with Libby Fireharm now, our elementary school lady. We start out in our district with like 70-ish in our grade, right, at all the elementary schools. By the time we get to middle school, we're at 40 something, right?
Mm-hmm.
Get to high school, now we're at like 30 something. And as far as I know, I've seen Melanie Johnson with her instrument on Facebook, but I'm as far as I know, she's not like doing what we're doing, like teaching.
She's not a professional musician.
Not a professional. And so I'm trying to do the math here of 70, 40 something, 30. And then is it really two of us in our grade?
Huh.
I'm trying to like not sugarcoat it for the people, which is what a lot of people don't like me to do, is I'm trying to get down to the actual reality of, so like I'm trying to conceptualize that in my head. And then back to this question, what are we doing here? Right? Is that like, and so
well, that's
like
an easy question to answer, because the point of public school and the point of public school orchestra fits into that, is like to expose kids to the world, right? And to teach them about the world, and to use different subjects and activities for them to learn about the world, to learn about themselves, learn about working with other people, right? So, essentially the goal of a public school string program is not to create professional musicians. It never occurred to me that was the goal. Much like the goal of social studies is not to produce history majors, and the goal of like if you did a similar math, like how many football players in our grade became professional football players, like zero.
Yeah.
Like in that sense, like then the orchestra program's got a pretty darn good percentage. And I think music plays a very unique role, because I think the potential of music education is even greater than actual music education. But like when you've got like math class and history class, there's all sorts of elements of education where there's a right and there's a wrong. And sometimes like with history, it's largely memory based, like you just have to like memorize stuff. And with math, it's there's a skill involved in addition to memorization, and like basically with automation and AI, like the whole idea of like what's the work of the future is really like all of these memorization based things, like all of that's going to be automated over time. You can Google history, you don't have to necessarily remember dates, right? I'm getting off track, but my point is like the potential of music to develop creativity and collaboration and all sorts of like soft skills that can apply in any environment to help people be more effective and positive. Like I think that's what are the underlying values that the process of music education can bring into people's lives. Like that right. To me, that's where public music school or public music education, that's the role it's filling. Now, what's amazing is that you can get teachers that are good enough in a public school to inspire students in those programs to become music teachers and to become performers, and to take those and start to apply that directly. Obviously that takes outside work of like lessons and practicing, and I don't think any professional musician has come solely as a result of the work done in a public school.
Right.
Right.
Yeah.
Because you're practicing outside of school, you're likely getting lessons and all sorts of stuff. Right. But, I mean, so essentially that dwindling number of like, okay, you had like 150 that became two. Like, to me, that number is interesting, but it's not indicative of the value of the process. And if you took the same look at any other activity in the school, I mean, I don't know how many
Yeah.
mathematicians came out of our grade, or
Yeah.
how
Yeah.
many,
Yeah.
how many professional sports people came out, after going through the public school sports programs. But
That's a good point. That's a
yeah.
good point, that you're all the other subjects don't, you're not putting a standard, you're not putting the same standard in this question to social studies and
I mean,
science and all that. Yeah, I hear you on that.
yeah, the
You know,
public school programs, through from kindergarten to high school, that's definitively not to prepare us to be professionals at anything. Like shop class, maybe kind of like is in that direction where hypothetically,
mm,
if you could work, in a garage with the skills you learn in like a
right,
few years of shop classes, right?
right,
But that's like trade oriented with that
right.
purpose, right? Um,
The thing that I've come up with as the answer to that is, especially with me getting to talk to them one on one in lessons, is all the non-musical stuff of if they're making excuses in this lesson, there's 100% likelihood their homework or they're making excuse, and like self-discipline and time management
yeah.
and all those, not, all adulty skills, that they're learning through sports and school. And that's the answer to that question that I've come to, is that like, this is really, I have one student right now who's, he's behind. I just started him and he's pretty behind the class and he's struggling. And I kind of have decided that, to get him back to really like sight reading it there is going to take a bit. And so I've had to readjust like what the purpose of this lesson is right now. And there was one thing that he was doing was he was kind of like, oh, I have to stand all day, and that kind of thing. We've stopped, him just kind of
Uh-huh.
like whining about little stuff.
Yeah.
The last 5 weeks, that whining's been gone for whatever reason. And so like, that's the way I've conceptualized his particular lesson.
And those are private lessons that you're doing.
Right,
Yeah.
right.
I mean, that's another unique thing, where I feel like for kids, for us, it maybe is second nature with the idea of lessons and the amount of time we spent taking private lessons.
Mm,
But if you take away our music lessons, like in what other context of development do you have such a one-on-one relationship with a teacher?
mm-hmm.
And
Yeah,
so like that kind of external parent adjacent,
right,
mentor figure, especially over a long period of time, like those relationships, for better or for worse, like that's a unique opportunity for a kid to feel like, their relationship with a teacher is not simply authoritative, but it's actually a relationship. And like
right.
you're getting to know this kid, and the ups and downs on a very intimate level that group classroom teaching just doesn't have the luxury for.
Right.
So
And
that's a
yeah,
meaningful relationship, apart from the music you're working on as well.
right. And so in that regard, I'm kind of curious. So with your family, I don't know much about David. I never knew him that much, but I did get to spend some time with Laura. I played a couple quartets with her and stuff. She was 2 years younger, right? And then with your dad, I've always been really, and on the lines of this question of like, what are we doing here? That's kind of leading me to the question of like, how hard do I go as a teacher? Like, how hard do I go on as a kid? And I'd love to just hear a little bit of your, because uh, no offense to him, but your dad had a little bit of reputation in town, and I'm sure you knew that. I'm sure you heard from many people. Your dad, I'll just tell you one tiny story that's just hilarious. That I was at KU camp for 2 weeks, and he was the guest conductor for like 2 days, and that's the only time I really ever talked to him, but or I ever saw him. But there was a moment where it was like the principal second violinist, and he wasn't like cussing, he wasn't screaming or anything, but he like chose her and went like at her for about 7 minutes. Like, no, more like more dynamics, more, and he was like getting her, like kind of getting play better. Let's go. Come on. And he like pointed, and so like, what was your, like, I guess there's a couple of questions. First of all, what was it like growing up with your dad and the striving and the pushing that I assume that you probably had? And what's your opinion on people who have that style of teaching?
Yeah. Well, for your listeners, for context, my dad, Glenn Block, was the conductor of the Kansas City Youth Symphony for decades. And so when I say I played in the Youth Symphony, I actually was playing under my dad. He was conducting, and so that was a unique situation for me to be in for those 5 years where, when else do you ride home with the conductor after rehearsal, right? And so it's like, yeah, he, I think, his reputation was that he was very demanding. He yelled a lot, and yeah, he could be very harsh. And I remember feeling awkward in rehearsals sometimes where he might pick on somebody, like I think was his habit, that like was a friend of mine, or whatever, that so it's like I felt that social awkwardness when I was in that group. And then the Youth Symphony had these like alumni concerts right around Christmas time. Like towards the end of December every year, they would invite alumni who were home from college to join in the orchestra for some big concert. And it was always fun because you'd get to see people you hadn't seen, in a year or two, and you used to play with them every week, that kind of thing. So it was really cool, actually. And I remember when I finally came back for my first alumni concert after being in college, and I was like, oh no, like, I had left and like, been in a serious music school. And then I come back and I see my dad just yelling at these children. And I was like, what is going on? And so, I mean, my perspective is like, I personally do not like that approach. And I think, like, I have a very different energy when I'm teaching. And so what's interesting about my dad specifically is because he would do all state orchestras around the country. So you and I participated in the Kansas All-State Orchestra, and I don't know if my dad ever conducted Kansas, but he conducted like 35 other states at some point.
Yeah.
And so inevitably I would end up at a music camp like Interlochen or at school, and I would meet other kids my age who had played under my dad at All-State.
Okay, sorry about that. So you were talking about how you came back and you were watching him kind of ream some of the other kids and gotten to ride home with him and stuff, right?
Yeah. So, I mean, yeah, long story short, I have a very different style of teaching, especially with young kids. But what's interesting is as I would meet other people who had worked with him at all states, I definitely met some people that hated him as a conductor, but I absolutely met a few people that said that he is the reason they became musicians. And so there was an interesting lesson in that, like I obviously, with my father, like I might be critical of something that I see that I don't like, but I think what was interesting is like, I think his MO was and is to push people and to like choose repertoire that is like actually legitimately beyond the ability of maybe a youth orchestra. We were playing, repertoire that professional orchestras, would have to really try hard to play well. And, we're just a youth symphony. So I think the idea that he was intentional about was he wanted to show the orchestra what it takes to play the great music and to give them that experience that they would absolutely not be able to get in any other public orchestra school setting, right? So that was his goal of kind of showing where the bar is. Now, I think what I saw was that we were definitively never reaching that bar. So here we are just struggling through really hard music and getting yelled at. Like
Yeah.
that's the lived experience that I remember.
Mm.
But that being said, I think there are certain people that really responded to that aspirational, you know, uh, like, you know, way of showing kids, you know, well, this is where you could end up and this is what it would take to get there. You know, even if you're not getting there, I think there's certain people that really responded and were inspired by that. And I know there's other people that hated it. And so, you know, I think it's just I feel like for better or for worse, he had a very divisive style that I know really resonated with certain types of people and didn't with others. And I definitely think I have a less divisive style of teaching.
Yeah, I've been thinking about this question a lot. Is with, again, with my teaching, of me sitting here. On the one hand, you have sort of the demanding of the perfect intonation and the perfect this and the perfect that, and then like I consider them the sort of motivational, funny kind of like fun kind of teachers, where they're like, good job to everything, and like, you know, they're just wanting the kids to like them and like being in here, and I'm having fun, you know, and all this stuff. And like, it I've been sort of trying to explain to a lot of people that there's benefits to both of those. I think philosophically, those teachers, I think, are kind of saying, if they enjoy coming to this room right here, like with me as the teacher, and they enjoy this experience, then that's going to hypothetically motivate them to want to play better and want to be there, etc. And the funny thing is, when I've had those types of teachers on the show, they'll say that a lot, but I get frustrated because I'll get 20 minutes of talking with them and they haven't talked about this kid getting good yet. You know, we've been talking about fun, you know, and then you have on the other side this other, like, kind of very demandy kind of a teacher. And I've always thought that part of the reason why a lot of the motivation was there is because, like, you start in fourth, fifth, whatever grade, and then you get up to like a ninth grade-ish, and you can feel that you're like doing like in lessons, you're doing like 2-page songs now. Like, you can feel like you're like doing something, like you're feeling at least somewhat good about what you're doing. And I think that's a lot of the motivation, rather than them liking the teacher and liking them be there. And that's, I think, more of where your dad's mindset more is you can feel that you're like kind of a stud with this right now, you know, that I can like do this, and you feel it inside. And so I struggle with the people that really get mad. I have more respect today for people like your dad than I did back then, because it doesn't feel good at the time. But what did you say about those other couple people that said later on in life, they were like, well, yeah, I was glad that he did, you know, like, what do you do with that? You know, it's like they hate it at the time, but then later on as an adult, they're kind of like glad you did that and glad you. So like, I don't know what to say to those people, you know, with those people that hate the drill sergeant kind of types, you know, it's like, what, there's a method to his madness a little bit. I mean, am I getting that right? Or like,
yeah, no, I mean, I think you're right. There's benefits and value to both approaches. And I do think that there's, you know, like for the process to be enjoyable is important, right? You know, it's like you want music to be a positive part of somebody's day. And with all the things that a kid or anybody, you know, a college student and has going on, you know, if playing music increases the stress in their life, like whether they become a professional or not, that's not the goal, right? We're not the goal of music is not to add stress.
right.
If you want to get better at something, you know, you want to have focus and you want to have discipline. But for music to be connected to stress, I don't think serves us in the long run, whether you're a Juilliard student or a fourth grader.
Right.
That being said, like, you know, I have a daughter who's almost 4.
Mm-hmm.
And so that means I'm like reading parenting books, right? Mm-hmm. And this one book that I'm in right now just had like a really good way of kind of saying, like, you know, one and like I noticed the instinct in myself as a parent, maybe more so than a teacher, but this idea of constant encouragement.
Mm-hmm.
The danger of constant encouragement, or you kind of connected that to the fun teacher of always
Mm-hmm.
saying good job. When a student or a kid learns that they don't actually have to do much to get positive feedback,
Mm-hmm.
they'll never work harder than they need to if they're getting positive feedback so immediately for
Mm-hmm.
doing so little. And so as a teacher and as a parent, learning how not to say, "Oh, good job, you opened the door,"
Yeah.
it's like,
Yeah.
where you're setting the bar for encouragement or yelling, or negative reinforcement, like, um, though that's a balance to figure out for each student or for each age range. um, but I think that's what you're saying, like the danger of being the fun teacher and being fully positive is that the motivation for the students you know can be compromised, actually,
Mm-hmm.
because if they come in and like on day two they're being told that they're nailing it, well, what are the other 363 days for, like, if
Yep.
if they've
Yeah.
already figured it out? So obviously, we've got to have goals to aim for, and but at the same time we want the process to be enjoyable. I mean, that's you know every teacher's got their own, like parents, every teacher's got
Mm-hmm.
their own baggage that they're carrying when they're now in that teaching role. And we're all trying to figure it out.
I thought Mary Lou had a pretty good balance of that.
Yeah,
She kept in a relatively light mood. She was, cracking jokes a little bit once in a while, at least her, 70-year-old jokes that she had. But she gave us, I mean, what did we play? Russian Easter, we were playing Capriccio Espanol, we played Night on Bald Mountain. Like we weren't playing like nonsensy music, so she set both of those, I thought, pretty well.
but
I mean, what do you
I do
think?
remember a few instances when she had to call us out and says,
Mm-hmm.
she's unhappy with something. And even that story I shared earlier, where
Mm-hmm.
she called me into her office to talk to me, like, negative reinforcement is also more powerful when it's saved. Uh,
Yeah.
and so it's like, if somebody's just constantly yelling and never satisfied as a teacher or as a coach, it's like then they're just like the angry person. They're not,
Mm-hmm.
like the negative reinforcement also loses power when it's
Right.
overused. And so, yeah, Mary Lee Jones had a positive energy,
Mm-hmm.
and a focused energy, but then when necessary, she could let us know that what was happening was unacceptable.
Right.
And then when, it meant something when it got to that point.
Right. I mean, we don't have to necessarily go into this, but the risk to me of the fun side is the extreme version of that is sort of the every kid gets a trophy mentality, which I'm not a huge fan of, and personally, and then the other side is the extreme, the other way, where it's never good enough and all that kind of stuff. And like, I've been trying the best I can to not give them encouragement until they do something really good, which is at least once they'll finally get it. And I'm like, good job, and they know that I mean it, because I'm not saying, and I mean, maybe that's kind of where you're getting at, is that you need the, not even negative is a bad word, but don't tell them they did it right when they didn't do it right, but when they do it right, you got to let them know, so because they don't have a direction if everything's negative, and then they do it right, and then so it's like you tell them, okay, we're working on rhythm or something on this line, and then when they get done with it, okay, yeah, but you're C sharp, and and so they're like, well, did I do the rhythm? So they don't have any kind of direction when you never say anything positive, is my personal opinion. I mean, do you need a
Oh, right.
balance there, is kind of what you're
Oh,
saying?
of course. Like, yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, the general rule is like, say two positive things for each negative thing. And that's not just to like sugarcoat things, but it's
Mm-hmm.
as you're saying, like to make it clear, well, what's good? What do we want to keep doing the
Mm-hmm.
way that we're doing? And then what's one thing that we can improve? Like that context of, you're not constant, like even when something can improve, it doesn't mean it's bad.
Right. Right.
And so like kind of understanding that perspective is helpful. And I think what you're saying is like, if you save the good job moment
Hmm.
for halfway through the lesson, then a student trusts you and they
Hmm.
trust your authenticity, that it means something and you're not just a character that's negative or a character that's positive, but you're someone whose opinion they can gauge. And like I remember like my undergrad teacher, Richard Aaron, I mean, he's an extreme person in a lot of ways, and I really love him. A lot of people, have love-hate relationships with him. But I remember actually the experience I had in lessons, like he would do this thing where it's like if you played like really great, he would be like, wow, like that phrase was the best I've ever heard you play. Like
Hmm.
that was fantastic. Like just like that was it. That was
Yeah.
it. And then like 5 minutes later, he'd be like, that was horrible.
Hmm.
Like, don't
Yeah.
ever do that again. Like, let's fix that. And it's like, just the clarity of the feedback. It wasn't sugar coated and it wasn't negative. It was just incredibly immediately clear. Like, oh, that was worth doing again, and that was not worth
Yeah.
doing again. So like, every teacher has their different, range.
Hmm.
But the idea that a student can trust what a teacher is saying, and it's not. Yeah, just that helps build the authentic relationship, where you don't have to say 100 things. You can just say the thing you're actually thinking.
Hmm.
But as a teacher, sometimes we have to remember that what we're thinking, like to direct our thinking to appreciate what's going well as well,
Right.
part of that.
And what as a teacher is not that good, but way better than 2 months ago. You know what I'm saying? Like you've heard their improvement. So it's like
Right.
not good is extremely like relative to the thing, and let them know that. I've tried to let them know that too, that like, dude, 3 months ago, you couldn't do this. We still got a
Right.
ways to go with this piece, but you couldn't do that 3 months ago. Like you're doing
Yeah.
good.
Yeah.
You're on the path, right? Is your what are you gonna do with your daughter? You
She's,
gonna encourage or like what?
I don't know. I feel like I'll definitely be a better father if she does not choose cello. But
Mm,
she's grabbing instruments and she loves singing and she plays piano, violin, and cello. Like we have a good time with her. We haven't gotten to the moment where we have to,
mm.
you know, do anything formal yet. I don't know exactly when that moment will be, but
You're not gonna be a good father if she chooses cello. That's a funny statement.
you know why? Because I'll have too many strong opinions.
Mm,
Like obviously, I know what she should do.
mm-hmm.
She chooses cello, like I'll have her next 20 years mapped out for her because I
Right.
obviously know the
Mm-hmm.
correct path for her.
Mm-hmm.
But that's actually probably not going to be so great if
Mm-hmm.
if I go in with that mindset.
Yeah.
Uh, I think my wife would love it if she plays fiddle, and
Mm-hmm.
part of me would love to avoid having to relive the Suzuki books. Um, from the parents' perspective, I've done it as a kid,
Mm-hmm.
and I trained to be a Suzuki teacher, so
Mm-hmm.
I've done it as a teacher. I don't think I can handle it as a parent too. Um, but I like the idea of my daughter not playing cello because it would be more likely that I could play with her in a
Mm.
casual
Oh
way.
yeah. Come on, you want to go through Lightly Row again? Come on, just admit it.
I really
And
don't.
perpetual motion. Come on.
Oh boy.
I do that. I do those with my students all the time. They're good songs. They're like, I'm not quite over them yet. I think maybe about 10 years I'll be pretty over it. But
All right.
but
When it happens, you'll know.
that's funny. Two last quick things I wanted to ask you, and then I'll let you get out of here. Is one, I'm kind of curious. Do you remember the Bishops? Jeff Bishop and Amy Fear. They were teachers in town. I
Yeah,
don't know if you
I
remember them,
do.
but
Yeah.
I my they were an example of a pretty generally known music couple in town. And
Uh-huh.
I've always wanted to ask them this, how that was as a music couple, because they weren't doing opposite things. They were doing the exact same thing with both the public
Interesting.
school orchestra. And I know I had a girlfriend in the past that was kind of starting to do some of the stuff that I was doing, teach violin. And I'll just be honest, I think more on her end than my end, but I think it was, it started to be a little bit of a problem
Hmm.
with a spouse that does music. There's another example of a couple in town where she's a pretty big piano teacher, and she has a pretty big studio, 40 or 50 kids. And then the other guy is like a guitar luthier dealing with like jazz guys all day and stuff, like high-end guitars and stuff. So I think those two don't really have any kind of a problem because their crap is so different. But have you guys, like, how has that been to be married to another musician? How is that like?
Yeah, so my wife and I met at teaching at Mark O'Connor's fiddle camp. Technically, he was the one who introduced us for the first time. So in a way, but she comes from a very more focused Scottish fiddle background and community, and so in that sense, like, there was never any competition, and in fact, when soon after we met, like, we liked each other, obviously, like, immediately, but I ended up touring in her band. So she was hiring me. And so I was learning all about Celtic music from her. Well, this is before we were dating. So I had a lot to learn from her about her world of music. And then I hire her at my camps in Florida, the Mike Block String Camp. And so we had a history of hiring each other. Then we eventually, when we started dating, we started playing duo shows because that was easy when we were traveling together. But ultimately, like, her interests are more focused than mine, and so there's a lot of other projects that I'm compelled to pursue. And so actually, it's really happened since our daughter has been born. We've done a couple tours when our daughter was a baby, and man, that was hard to be managing all of that simultaneously. And so when we're both on stage at the same time, there's just zero wiggle room for anything to go wrong. It's one thing for both of us to be working at the same time, but like in different places, or one of us is in Boston, managing childcare, like, that's hard enough. But if we're working in the same place at the same time on the same stage, then, like, if the babysitter, cancels, it's like there's no backup plan.
Right.
And so basically, like, post-pandemic, Hanukkah is now having other cello players play in her band, and we're kind of working more separately, and also just kind of alternating childcare a little bit, because it is difficult to travel with the small kid, and like, the logistics of any tour can be complicated, and when you're traveling with a kid, then, like, you might also be traveling with a nanny, or if you're not traveling with a nanny, you're getting local babysitters city by city, and that's like a whole nother logistical. Anyway, long story short, it's so obviously easier for us to not work together at this current phase, unfortunately. In a camp setting, like, when she's, like, obviously she's still teaching at the camp that we run in Florida, that's different because we're in one place for a week and we've got a community, we can do childcare. But it's been an evolving thing where she started hiring me, and then I was able to hire her, and then we would do collaborative stuff, and now, unfortunately, we're kind of not working together as much.
That's nice that you guys can have such an adult relationship about that. And, like, there was, I'm sure it was some other musicians there could be jealousy or not, and you're talking about a whole different set of things, like logistical stuff, but there's also like a whole jealousy thing of stuff. And it sounds like you guys never had anything like that, which is really neat. That's really cool.
Well, yeah, I mean, Hanukkah has been a big inspiration. Like, I used to live in New York, and what really inspired me about Hanukkah's, like, touring life was how much she was able to maximize, like, the New England touring opportunities. Like, there's just a lot, all those states, New Hampshire, Maine, everything's so close. So you can actually do a lot in New England, within driving distance. So I feel like I was able to learn a lot from Hanukkah when I moved from New York to Boston, about, like, how to, navigate that region. But like, with my classical back, like, my Hanukkah, my wife, she can read music, but she can't really sight read music, nor does she play any gigs that require reading. So it's like, our backgrounds are so different, and the gigs that we get called for are so different that
Yeah.
it's rarely been a direct thing.
Yeah.
We might play similar venues with our bands,
Hmm.
but that becomes collaborative where we can kind of share booking info with each other and stuff
That's
like
fun. Last big question for you, and then I'll let you go. Is both you and I, you did, yeah, you did Suzuki as well, and so both of us kind of started like with some pretty relatively heavy ear. I know for myself, I had a lot of ear training and then I struggled with sight reading. Fourth grade, I couldn't even read nothing. And then switching to viola, freshman year for me, then I had a whole nother freaking clef to deal with and stuff. But going with all of that ear training and then into orchestra. But it's really interesting that you've been talking about this, that most of my crap is all non-classical now. I do it all in lessons. I'll teach all classical in lessons, but all my band stuff has been, just insanely fun for me, doing rock and country and all this crap, but
that.
you how has the not necessarily playing the other genres, but how has improvising been for you? Because I've talked to a lot of jazz guys where they'll talk to people about your material, right? Where you have all of this, like, and you've practiced. All the jazz guys will do their diminished or octatonic or all these like modes and crap, and for me, I just play a bunch of classical crap over my jazz. And I've learned little things over the years or whatever, but everybody says, do that. Whatever you have under your hand, that's what you play. And this is your material. And you play like and like, so how is, especially cello too, because I know there's a billion fiddle players out there, but how is the
Yeah.
improvising coming to the improvising? Was that pretty natural given how much facility and crap you had, or was it hard, or how has that been?
Well, yeah, I mean, any classical musician with the desire to improvise, could and should, because as you're saying, like just the facility on the instrument on a physical level should be there. I do think what I've grown to like, the advice that you were just articulating is so good, because you can't play anything that's not a part of you. Like,
Mm-hmm.
then you're just like putting on a mask and pretending. Like, to
Mm-hmm.
play jazz without having jazz language is really just like an imitation or a parody, right?
Mm-hmm.
um so that's great. I think what I ended up appreciating is, like, this the skill of improvisation is a skill. Like, for us to improvise in a classical style, or whatever style is ours, like, that's a different, literally a different part of the brain than than
Mm-hmm.
than reading music, right? So
Mm-hmm.
eye hand coordination, different part of the brain than ear hand coordination.
Yeah.
So just the act of improvising is a skill and a part of the brain that can be developed. Now, what's cool about music is that improvisation can manifest differently in different styles. And so for me, I appreciate treating different styles of music like languages. Like I may feel comfortable improvising in a jazz language, and maybe I feel comfortable improvising in a bluegrass language. But kind of understanding, like, which language I'm speaking. Like, that's the journey of like being a multi-style musician.
Mm-hmm.
Like, much like if you were learning Spanish, like, the reason to learn Spanish is, like, if you're going to go to Spain or to Mexico, that you can actually communicate with people that you wouldn't be able to communicate with before.
Right.
To me, that's the reason I learn different styles of music too, is so I can communicate with other people that I wouldn't be able to otherwise, both audiences and musicians. So for me, improvisation, um, like, it's this balance of like learning the existing languages improv, like learning jazz improv so that I can communicate with jazz musicians and jazz audiences,
Mm-hmm.
learning how to improvise in an Arabic style with microtones, and so that I can work with Arabic musicians. Like, those are skills that I think like I appreciate learning them in that language specific mindset. Um, but then it's like, when I have my own group, under my own name, like then I have the luxury of speaking multiple languages at the same time and be like,
Right.
well, how do all these languages feed my voice?
Mm,
So that's in a way like this secondary process of mixing, my particular, current combination of interests or things. So um, I think, I mean, if in your situation, like you're able to communicate with your classical language, even in jazz setting,
mhm,
like, that's the goal, right?
mhm.
Um, is to feel like you can participate and that other people can react to what you're bringing to the table. Um, yeah. And
Because it's really just like the tunes, especially jazz guy. When I've gone into like open jams or something, and I'm calling out All of Me or whatever, Night in Tunisia or any of these tunes, and they're like, okay, let's do, because I'll call out Wave or some song that I know that they're gonna know, and like, and then you do your thing, and everybody's always okay with it. It's like you play your style, but as long as you know the song, then you're, at least the head, and
if
you
you
can
can
do.
hang, you can hang, right?
Yeah.
And with the language thing, it's like, even like like an immigrant who comes to America,
Mm,
they may speak with an accent. That doesn't mean you can't understand them,
right.
So the question is, to what degree is the accent helpful to give like cultural depth to what somebody is saying? And you like for you, like they understand where you're coming from because you're playing jazz with your classical accent. That's
Right.
fine. It's you can still express yourself. Um,
Yeah,
you know,
classical accent's a funny way to put it, isn't it? Yeah, I
yeah.
mean that's a fun, yeah.
And then ultimately, like if you become fluent in another language, you may get rid
Yeah.
of your accent, you might not, or just like obviously like you'll always have a mixture of influences, but that's the lens through which I try and get better at improv.
Yeah.
Is understanding that each style of music has an accent that I can get deeper into and learn more vocabulary from.
Yeah. I remember at when I first got into town, it I saw these open jams because I was in Wichita for about 10 years for school. And then I came back and I was like, oh my gosh, there's like 2 or 3 open jams a day somewhere in town, blues, rock, And so there was one day, I think I went out to Jeffrey Bishop's school. So it was crazy because I found that most, especially in the violin area, I haven't seen too many people that go into sort of both. They're either kind of in the fiddle lane or the classical lane. Maybe over where you are, they're going back and forth. But it was so funny because in the morning I went to like quartet rehearsal out at his school, right? And then there was like it was like I think a blues jam and then a jazz jam and a blues jam, so all on the same day. And then it was like maybe my rock band rehearsal Tuesday night, and then I went back to quartet the Wednesday, and then the next night, that Wednesday night, I was at another like blues jam, and maybe somewhere in the week I was doing another country band too. So I was like going like 5 different styles in like 3 days. It was like really silly, but it was really a fun
Living
challenge
the
to.
dream. That's
Oh,
great.
dude, it was great. It was Kid in a Candy Store, but it was really funny because I'm like, I was kind of going like, okay, like, all right, uh back to clean tone. All right, we're back at school again. Clean
Awesome.
tone, clean. And then I'd go out to the jazz and I'm like, okay, I can kind of go a little crazier on my notes and stuff. And then I'd go to country. I'm like, okay, cliche. I was like, boom. I don't know. It was cracking me up. Just, going like, making sure I don't go too crazy in this country band because they need it to be a little bit more straightforward. Because I don't know. It was just funny to,
Yeah.
to be able to switch, each
Yeah.
it was a fun challenge for me, and I'm sure you've
So,
kind of been like that at different times too, doing so much different stuff.
yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's life is understanding which hat you're wearing and how
Mm-hmm.
you serve the music, in the room that you're in. And
Mm-hmm.
yeah, the broader the range that you're traversing from string quartet to blues to jazz, country, like I think that's just a healthy process because it makes you question all of these things. Like each room, the idea of what's good or what's helpful changes depending on which
Mm-hmm.
of those environments you're in. And
Yeah.
so there's never, so it's no longer about good or bad or whatnot. It's sort of like, well, what's most helpful and appropriate in this setting and not in this setting. And you just start to be really intentional about,
Mm-hmm.
how you approach music and what your goal is. Like, is my goal to play cleanly? Is my goal to play to provide energy? Like that
Mm-hmm.
clarity. I appreciate that mindset where you kind of have
Mm-hmm.
to, like, you're not just like saying like what key am I in? You're like showing up, you're like, what is my goal?
Yeah,
Is
yeah.
my purpose in this setting? Like, it's just like the multi-style approach forces you to kind of ask the big questions immediately.
You're not bulldozing over everyone, and it's
Yeah.
not me. I'm adjusting to the room I'm in, like that's what I try to do. But uh last question, tell them about your camp.
Well, it connects to everything we've been talking
Mm,
about, Rob. But yeah, this is going to be the 14th year of the Mike Block String Camp, the horribly named event, but it's a very, very special week. Happens in Vero Beach, Florida. And it's just a multi-style string camp, and all the learning and performing is done by ear. So I get to hire a lot of my favorite musicians from different styles, Celtic, bluegrass, jazz,
mm,
Latin, contemporary styles. And we teach by ear, all levels, all ages. We have very kind of focused classes. So we've got
mm.
classes for kids, high schoolers, professionals, college students, amateur adults. Everybody's kind of got their different track. And yeah, we learn music by ear, and then halfway through the week, everybody splits up into bands, and we
Mm-hmm.
do ensemble coaching, and everybody chooses, things to, what they've learned. From what they've learned, they choose what to perform, and they get to make their own arrangements and get coached on that process. And so it's really kind of like kind of a week long intensive that kind of mirrors sort of what I find most satisfying, creatively and
Mm,
professionally, of
yeah.
just learning thing, like working on improv, learning by ear, different styles, and then ultimately putting it in this collaborative process with a band.
That's fun, man. I think I saw a clip of you, and you had, I can't remember if it was all cellos, but you all were standing in a circle. It was on YouTube, and you were doing stuff, and
Oh, sure.
you were like kind of half conducting a little bit, and everybody's
Yeah.
looking like you're having a lot of fun. I assume that was at your camp. I don't know what clip it was, but
Likely would have been.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. But that looks cool, man. I did want to also tell you that I went and looked you up a couple years ago, and I saw you playing because I didn't know what you were doing, and I saw you playing with some chick, and it says Pantera, and you're,
Ah,
and I was just like cracking up. I'm just like, dude, that's sweet,
yeah.
So I'm just, that's so cool, man, that you're doing all these different styles and playing with everybody, and um, that's just, it's really awesome, man. Thanks a lot for coming on and
Thanks
talking.
for thinking of me, Rob. It's great to see you and great to chat
Yeah.
about all these old Casey things. Yeah.
Yeah. So, anyway, I again, I want to say that I think all of us are really proud of the stuff that you're doing, man. It's really neat to hear you playing with, Yamaha and all these people. It's just, it's fun to see that, and I hope you keep doing it, man. That's really great
Oh,
about your
really
camp and everything.
I appreciate the support, Rob.
Yeah.
Yeah. I hope we get to hang out in person again. For whatever reason, none of my tours ever bring me through KC.
Mm,
So I've been fighting to find a way to come back. And it's been awkward, actually. Now it's been so long since I've played in Kansas City that I feel like it's got to be a really good gig when it happens. Because
yeah.
if I'm seeing everybody for the first time in 20 years, I don't want it to be a mediocre.
Oh, sure.
So
Yeah.
now, like the pressure is rising, but I
Yeah.
definitely want to come back and just have an excuse to reconnect with everybody, and I hope we can see each other then.
Yeah, me too, man. Well, thanks for coming on, and I guess that's about it. Our time's running out again.
Okay,
What a
perfect.
turd. But anyway, thanks for coming on, man, and keep in touch, and we'll talk again sometime, I'm sure. But that was Casey Music Talk. I'm Rob Foster. It's Mike Block, and we'll be back next time talking to another musicians about all sorts of stuff. So we will see you guys later. Thanks.
Bye, Rob.